If you told me a few weeks ago that I'd be walking out of a January horror movie about an AI killer doll, seriously considering if this could be in my top 10 of the year, then I would have called you crazy. But I wouldn't have seen M3gan yet. Hello everyone and welcome to the 3-star review for M3gan. Let's get right into it. Now I want to start off with my 3 favorite things about the movie because honestly this one really surprised me. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the serious nature of the story and the themes it talks about. I wasn't expecting anything much more than a story about an AI killer doll that just goes around hacking people to pieces, but I got some real depth here. Now, is this one of the most philosophical horror movies I've ever seen? No, but it does a lot more than expected from its premise and its trailers. We get a close personal look at how grief can affect a child and can create bonds between that child and this AI doll, which is not a real person, but she sees it as a real person. I did not expect this movie to have really uncomfortable scenes of the Aunt Gemma trying to be a parent, trying to comfort this child, but not knowing how to do it. Katie's character felt very real and exactly how you would expect a child in this situation to react. She's just lost her parents and she needs to form an emotional attachment to something, to someone, and her aunt really isn't there to provide that for her, so she sees it in M3gan, which segues really nicely into my next point, and that is M3gan herself was incredible. Now this movie is much less of a horror movie than you'd expect. It's much creepier, it's much more focused on its story, its plot, its characters. But that doesn't stop M3gan herself from being pretty terrifying at moments. The way she moves, the way she talks, the way her features look as if they're human, but just something not quite right. There are some specific scenes that I'll mention later on in the video in the spoiler section, but wow, I was very impressed. M3gan's personality also felt like something unique. It didn't feel like a Chucky ripoff. She really felt like her own character in this movie rather than just the villainous presence. There are moments where you even believe what M3gan's saying and you truly think, wait a minute, this AI has a point. She was serious when she needed to be. She had some really funny moments. She had some really crazy moments. The dance scene that went absolutely viral from the trailer was incredible. And honestly, I just can't wait to see this character again in a sequel. Now, my third favorite thing about this movie was something that I often see lacking in movies today, and that was some perfect examples of setup and payoff. The script would cleverly set up something M3gan can do, one of her abilities, and then it'd be stuck in the back of your mind and you'd be thinking, how can she use that? When is she going to use that? And then later on, you'd get that moment and it would be really satisfying. It can be the most simple of things, sometimes established with a shot, with a line of dialogue, with an ability that M3gan learns. And it was really creative and it was really satisfying to watch these things happen and then have some great payoff later on. Now, in terms of my issues with the movie, I don't actually have that many. The first and major one was that it's very easy to tell this movie was edited down from its more bloody, gory version. There are 2 specific kill scenes in the movie where there's a weird cut or there's a weird edit and you can tell, like, yeah, this was originally meant to be a lot gorier, but I'm presuming because of the dance scene that went viral, they decided to edit the movie down so that a younger audience could experience it as well, so they could obviously increase profits. But to be fair, I mean, that probably means we're going to get a sequel because of how much money this movie's made so far, so I'm not complaining. The second thing is, I thought this movie had a few moments where the tone was slightly inconsistent, especially with the boss character. He felt very much like he didn't belong in the same movie as everyone else, which was trying to be serious, and then this guy's just acting like a goofy side character. Overall, I thought they balanced the more comedic and serious moments pretty well, but this was one that stood out. It was quite hard for me to come up with personal issues that I had with this movie, so I thought I'd talk about one that I could see many other people having, and that is the pacing. Due to the nature of what this movie actually is, the pacing is a lot slower than you would expect. I think that's going to throw a lot of people off who are coming into this movie just looking for a killer doll murdering people for 2 hours. Now, moving on to the spoiler categories, I'd like to talk about my 3 favorite specific moments from the movie because these are some I'm going to remember for the rest of the year. First off, the scene where M3gan kills the dog and she lures it out by mimicking the voice of the next door neighbor, I thought was brilliant. It was the classic example of setup and payoff. Earlier in the movie, we see that M3gan can do this thing where she can mimic someone's speech. And you're wondering in the back of your head, where's that going to come into play later? Who's she going to use it on? And then you see it in this scene. They give you a moment to sort of predict it. And then they give it to you. And it's really satisfying. It's really creepy. And I loved it. The second one is not something I've seen people talk about. And that was the opening scene, which was essentially this toy advert. I thought it was so terrible and so realistic. Like, this is exactly what you'd expect to see as an advert in the middle of some kid's cartoon show. It showed me immediately how there were going to be satirical undertones throughout the film, and I thought that was a really cool way to set it up. The third has to be the kill scene in the forest. Just the way that M3gan acts as if she's just a doll. This kid takes her, starts playing around with her, slaps her in the face, which I thought was hilarious, by the way. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. And then this is the first time we really see that creepy movement when she gets up off her back, and then when she chases after him on all fours. I know a lot of people have found that a bit silly, a bit goofy, and I think it is, but I also thought it was pretty menacing, to be honest. Imagine being chased by that. The only thing that slightly ruined this scene for me was how it ended off, which was probably the worst cut of the movie, which was obviously to avoid that higher rating. The cut was very strange, it felt out of place, and it felt like something very last minute rather than natural. Now, this movie had some really great shots, and I wanted to shine a light on that. My top three have to be, firstly, M3gan getting up and standing in front of the neighbor before she kills her. I thought just the way they used the shadow and this just essentially creature slowly rising, slowly getting up, it was really terrifying and well done. Secondly, a shot that's actually been used in the trailer, which I thought was just really creepy looking, is M3gan sitting on the stand with the rest of the toys in the forest. I feel like just how much she stood out there just made the shot really interesting. Lastly, from the scene where M3gan kills the dog, we see a long shot of the hole in the fence. We hear her talking in the mimicked voice, and then we just slowly see her hand drop down into view through the hole, and she drops the dog treats on the floor. Very chilling, very well done. Now, finally, a category that I thought of specifically for this movie, because it was something that happened a lot, are these really uncomfortable, almost cringe-worthy moments between Gemma and Katie when she first took her in. First off, when they arrive at the house for the first time, and Katie goes to try and play with the toys on the shelf, and Gemma comes up and she's like, no, those are collectibles, those aren't toys, you can't play with those. It was just one of those first moments when you're like, oh, this isn't going to be good, she is not going to be a good mother. Secondly, later on in the movie, when she just leaves her alone with the iPad and goes off to work in the office, when she says, oh, I'll only be a few hours, and then spends the rest of the day in there. And finally, the worst moment of all, which had me dying, was when the therapist is there and she's trying to show her how to play with this ball, and Gemma's like, no, you can't play with the ball like that. It's not a ball, it's not for rolling back and forth. It can do lots of other things. The therapist encourages them to just roll it back and forth. And Gemma's just like, yep, I guess I'll just sit here and roll this like a tennis ball. Oh my god, why? I feel like all of these moments gave us much more sympathy for M3gan as a character, and really helped us to understand why this AI would decide it needs to fill that parental role for Katie, because Gemma just isn't ready for that. Overall, I absolutely loved the movie. I'm so happy a January horror movie was finally this great. I thought M3gan was equal parts creepy, emotional, as well as thought-provoking, and that's something I just really didn't expect from this movie. If they don't make a sequel, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed, but given the box office, I'd also be very surprised. Thank you very much for watching. I'm really glad I've finally been able to get my first review out. I hope you guys enjoyed it and continue to enjoy the content. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Gotta do the classic YouTube thing, and I will see you guys in a blur.